Good afternoon, everyone. I am CA Neha Gargmiratia, moderator for this webinar. We are very much delighted to welcome you all in this webinar been organized by our ICI Committee on Commercial Law, Expert Advisory and NPO Cooperatives. Today it is my pleasure to be the moderator for this event, and by the name Navigating the DPDP rules, that is Digital uh, Personal Data Privacy Rules, Key Compliance Requirement and Oversight on 4th of December from 2nd p.m. to 4 p.m. onwards, being organized by our wonderful committee. In a short while, we will start this webinar. I would like to apprise you about the committee. This committee is focused to encourage the chartered accountants to shape the strategy and policy that unlocks economic, financial, and social value while combining the analytical foresight with the commercial acumen. One of the core areas of this committee is to serve the multifunctional task of analysis, knowledge dissemination, inputs to regulators on policy formulation, to develop and publish technical guidance, background material, etc., and to create the awareness for professional opportunities for chartered accountants in commercial law, economic advisory, and NPO cooperatives. Our eminent speaker will talk on navigating DPDP rules, key compliance requirement, and oversight in this webinar, and we hope that the same shall be useful to our members. So before we proceed to invite the sir, I would like to give a brief introduction about the sir. C. Uday Kulkarni sir is a practicing chartered accountant with a professional experience of 27 golden years. A fellow member of the ICAI, Uday sir is certified internal auditor and also certified information system auditor. He is also qualified as insolvency professional under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of India. Uday sir has also completed digital forensic courses. Uday sir has certified data privacy solution engineer. His focus area are information system audit, cybersecurity, forensic accounting, and fraud investigation, IBC advisory, and audit of data privacy. CA Uday sir has wide experience in the various types of information system audit, external audit, internal audit, fraud investigation, and due diligence. He also appeared before National Company Law Tribunal as authorized representative. Apart from practicing, Uday sir is a national faculty for forensic accounting and fraud detection courses of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and also the national faculty for concurrent audit of bank certification courses of ICI. He has imparted training on various aspects of forensic accounting and investigation, money laundering and legal aspects, cybersecurity in Sri Lanka, Nepal, CA Institute, RBI Academy, National Forensic Science University, SBI Credit Risk Academy, NIBM, etc. He is the member of expert group formed for forensic accounting and investigation standards of ICI. Now I shall request Uday sir to please enlighten our audience for the same topic.
Good afternoon, all, and thank you, Neha, for your kind introduction. And I welcome all the participants in this webinar related to this digital personal data protection rules, the much awaited thing. It was in a talk for almost 2 years because all of us know that this Digital Personal Data Protection Act is published in 2023. But we were waiting for the rules of it. And this is just to remind all of you that this is not the Digital Personal Data Privacy Act or rules. This is the Digital Personal Data Protection, because there is a difference between the privacy and the protections, and it is supported by the various judgments of the Supreme Courts in India. Because privacy is something different and the protection of the digital personal data is something different. Privacy is, of course, the fundamental rights of everybody. I'm not going to touch upon those aspects because today we are going to navigate between only the rules of this Data Protection Act, right? So, as I said, we were much waiting for this kind of an rules, because when this act was enacted in 2023, a lot of questions were there amongst the various stakeholders कि ये act तो आ गया, but how to proceed with its compliances, and considering the huge amount of penalties those are mentioned in the act, there was a lot of discussions going on. In the other countries, similar laws are available. So every thought was coming from that corner also, that similar kind of an rules would be there as what are there in other countries, and so on and so forth. But basically now the things are much better shape now, because on the 13th of this November, the Gazette has declared some important things and basically the rules. But the first thing which is to be mentioned here now, the DPDP Act, Digital Personal Data Protection Act, is now enforced from 14th of November 2025. Then the data protection board is going to be set up, and that process is, I hope, is also started. Then the numbers of members and the constitution and the whole structure, administrative related things, that is also will take up the speed. So basically, the things, as I said, are getting much clearer. One thing which we should understand, that when the act was there, everybody was asking some questions related to that. So those who can now understand the difference between the act and the rules, or those who may not understand, in a simple language, I can say that the act says what you have to do. So it specifically refers the question starting from the what, right? So what the things we have to ensure for the compliances and the security of the digital personal data by defining the digital personal data, and all the other things that what needs to be done by the various entities who are collecting this digital personal data, that has been enacted through the act. But the how part, how to make the compliances of those provisions which are there in the act, that how part is now answered by these rules. So if one has to understand what to do for the digital personal data protection, they will have to refer to the provisions of the act, sections of the act. But how to make the compliances of this provision, if someone wants to check that how part, how can I do the compliances, you will find the answers in the rules. And this is the well structured passion in India with which we swim along with other acts also. So this is nothing different from that. Some important provisions. So there are three different deadlines, you can say timelines, which are mentioned in these rules. The first basic things are, there are certain rules and certain sections of this DPDP Act which are going to be applicable immediately from the date of publishing of this gazette, that is on the 13th of November 25. Some sections, some rules are going to be effective or implementable from the 1 year point of view. So those would be applicable from 13th November 2026. And some sections and some rules from the 18 months. So the timelines are divided into the three parts, right? Of course, the immediate sections which are coming into the applicability is, as I said, the setting of the Data Protection Board of the India, because it is going to be the regulator for under this act to monitor the compliances, regulate the compliances, ensure the compliances, and so on and so forth. So that part is being initiated immediately. The second important section, which has been immediately coming into the effect, is that it is cleared by Section 38 that the if there is any conflict between the two laws, let us say between the DPDP Act provision and any other provision under any other act, let us say under the Information Technology Act. So if some conflict arises between these provisions, then this Data Protection Act will prevail as far as the digital personal data is concerned. So, and that provision is also getting effective from this date of 13th November 2025. But even though this provision is getting effectively applicable, again, there will be certain inclarity, I can say, if let us assume that immediately such conflict arises, because still the Data Protection Board is in the construction phase, I can say. So no regulatory structure available to give the decision about that. But as per the whatever the rules that has been published, the act is having the upper hand as far as the digital personal data is concerned. Section 39 of this act is also going to be very impactful, and that is again going to be applicable from the 13th of November this month, I mean 2025. And it says that no civil court have the jurisdiction to enter any suit or proceeding in respect of any matter which the board is empowered about. The board here means the Data Protection Board, right? So, as I said, this regulatory authority, the board, whatever the breaches, whatever the cases related for the investigation of the data breach and the consequential implications of that, so that part is also now mandated to the board. So civil courts or any other types of the courts, those are barred from initiating any judicial proceedings against such type of things. But let me tell that even though these provisions are made applicable immediately, the procedural part effectively will take some time. But as this clarity at least has been given for certain things, right? As I said, some of the sections of this act are going to be applicable from the next year, that is from 13th of November 2026. And those are related to the consent management, because I'm not going to going back to the provisions of that, because in these sessions we are totally focusing about the rules, how part, because we have already conducted many sessions on the provisions under the act, and the main provisions, if we want to repeat for the sake of understanding how it's correlated to that. So this act is about the protection of the digital personal data. And digital personal data is defined. What is personal data? What is digital personal data? And there are certain concepts which are emerged out of this act, like data fiduciary, the entity or the person who is collecting the data principal, the human being, individuals to whom that digital personal data belongs to, right? Data processor, if the data fiduciary is sharing the data to some other entity for further processing, then that will be the data processor. That entity will be known as a data processor. What is data processing, right? So all these things already is defined, discussed. Provisions related to that also we have discussed. And certain things that notice to be sent to obtain the consent, consent management, life cycle of the consent management, and most importantly, the rights to the data principles, right? What are the rights? So, for example, now the data principles means you and me, right? Who is sharing data with a lot of websites, with a lot of entities, right? And we need to understand that now the rights are enacted and those are applicable. So, right to correct the data, right to collect the information about what has happened with my shared data, right to erase the data, then all such right to delete the data, all such rights are now given to the data principle. And those are very, very important things. The data principle has given the right to know for what purposes the shared data is going to be utilized. And every data fiduciary means the company, it could be anything who is collecting the data. It could be on the website also, because website also collects a lot of personal data. Your name, your email ID, your mobile number, your date of birth, right? So all this is treated as a digital personal data, but for what purposes this data is going to be used? The act says that it should be used only for the lawful purposes. So all this is a summarized, I can say, the synopsis of this Data Protection Act. And the related rules now, those were the what points. Now, how is what we are going to discuss. But the clarity has given by these rules also that these some of the sections related to the complete life cycle of the consent management that will be effective from the next year, next November 26. Some of the sections which are directly connected with the data principle, right? So actual implementation of this by the data fiduciary, that is going to be applicable from the May 27. So you can say the government has given ample amount of time of 18 months for all the data fiduciary, including the chartered accountants, because chartered accountants also are going to be act like a data fiduciary, because chartered accountants are collecting a lot of individual data from their individual clients. So, for the implementation purposes, this 18 months have been given to them. And during these 18 months, I'm going to discuss at the end of this session what the preparation kind of points we can go with that. What are the actions with which we can be ready with? So a lot of time I think the government has given for actual implementation of 18 months. So from the May 27, actually, we should have the consent from all our clients, right? We should have the purpose clear. We should have what we are collecting as an individual data. We should be able to understand and implement the general obligations of the data fiduciary. Then we have to yet to wait the government's decision that to whom they are going to declare as a significant data fiduciary. Uh, and this significant data fiduciary, they will have some additional obligations. So and of course the grievances redressal mechanism in case of a breach of the data. So these are some actual implementable things actually to confirm, to ensure the compliances of these provisions. And for that period, the data fiduciary will enjoy 18 months. So in these 18 months, I hope you will get a lot of knowledge like these webinars, like workshops, and some action points at various forums, of course. So this time is, I can say, the golden opportunity to look at all our processes where the digital personal data is collected, stored, and all these things, right? We'll discuss about it. Similarly, if you now talk about the how part, because in this session, as we are deep diving only into the rules, there would be some another session which will try to combine both the things, action versus rules, and the implementing guidance for that. I hope we will be able to have one more session directly connecting with these things. But right now, we are deep diving only into the rules, because this is recently is published in the official gazette. So at the outset, you can see there are 23 rules and 7 schedules. Right, this is what is the outset of these rules. If you see the first schedule, which is a part of these rules, so it is related for the condition of the registration of the consent manager. Then what are the obligations, duties of the consent manager? So that part is covered in the first schedule. Second schedule is again important because a lot of the digital personal data is also getting processed by the various government agencies, whether it could be the state agencies or the central government agencies. And for them, certain standards have been developed under the rules, and those standards are published under the second schedule of these rules. So every government agency, they also have to look into these standards, because every central and state government offices, they also come under the provisions of this act, and they have to ensure the compliances and the standards for the as a guidelines are available under the second schedule. Third schedule is about the retention of the data, then the deletion of the data, that kind of an time period for specific class of data fiduciary right now is mentioned. I hope more and more kind of an data fiduciary into that will be included as and when the time gets progresses. Fourth schedule is related to the certain exemptions for the consent related to the child, because the act says that in case of an data or digital personal data of a child, the consent from their parents is essential, but certain exemptions to that is given under the fourth schedule. So those specific entities, and basically these are the hospitals where the child treatment or their mental related things treatment are taken care. And another, of course, is the educational institutions, right, where those institutions are authorized only to process the data only for the clinical treatment purposes or only for the educational purposes, nothing more than that. And for that purposes, there are certain exemptions given to them. And the fifth, sixth, seventh schedule, those are related to the this data protection board as a regulatory authority. So this is the structure, I can say, at the outset of these DPDP rules. Now, as I said, the sections which are applicable immediately, we discussed that. Similarly, for the rules also, the rules which are immediately mandated from the November 2025 are mostly related to the rules of the establishment of the data protection board. So I hope within 2 months or so, we will have some news about the exact authorities and the persons taking charge in that data protection board as a chairperson, and the members, etc., etc., their offices, the method and mode of communication with them. So all these, things will be get cleared within a month or two. I'm expecting that, because immediate task which the board has to come up with and they have to ensure to complete that is the registration of the consent manager, right? So these things we have to wait for a couple of months. As I said, the consent manager. Now, remember when we were discussing the provisions of this Data Protection Act, we were discussing that the consent manager would be the new kind of a business which will be coming up. And consent manager is having its own life cycle, because right from sending up the notices for the to the clients of the data fiduciary, obtaining their consent, for whatever the digital personal data we are consuming, the data fiduciaries are consuming. And when I'm mentioning the life cycle, that means the rights are given to the data principals, every individuals, that they can modify the consent, they can withdraw the consent, right? They can request to delete or erase the data. So all this is going to happen with certain kind of a mechanism. It's not possible manually, and for that purpose, help in the digital form is definitely required. And on that background, a consent manager could be the new separate business entities which are required to be taken help of. But it is not clear, I can say, if there is a smaller kind of a business entity, like let us say the small chartered accountancy firms, which are handling, let us say, 100 clients. So it may be possible for the small chartered accountancy firms to manage that consent management life cycle within the firm. So it could be the internal consent management. So they may keep the record, maybe on the paper-based things, or maybe with some small kind of an software. Okay, so that may be possible, but uh, the clarity is required whether it is mandatory to obtain the services of the external consent manager which are registered with this board. But of course, when the entities, when the data fiduciaries like the banks, insurance companies, hospitals, where voluminous data is getting consumed, personal data is getting consumed, so it is not easy for them. Now you can imagine the State Bank of India, their number of customers, or any other bank is India, or any other insurance companies of India. They are handling a voluminous data of their customers. So it is not possible for them to keep the watch of what is happening in each and every customer's consent life cycle. So there could be the thousands of customers on the daily basis. They may give the consent, they may withdraw the consent, they may request the corrections. And all these things are going to happen. And the act expects that whatever the data principal is communicating through this consent, a detailed record of that, a detailed trail of that needs to be maintained, right? And that is going to be a secured kind of an evidences which needs to be carefully handled. And in case of a data breach, there could be, there could be the cases of the data breach. There could be the complaints from from the data principal about the breach of the consent and so on and so forth. So in that case, these evidences are going to be very crucial part in that legal proceedings before the data protection board. So consent management is going to be a tough call, and it requires a lot of technological and digital platforms, to manage all these things. So the separate entities are required definitely for that, and the rules are pretty much clear about that. These consent management entities needs to be registered. Now, right now, what is happening? I have experiencing that many of my friends from hospitals, from the various industries, various companies, various banks, they are connecting me, and they are saying that okay, now various vendors, software vendors are visiting them, and they are saying that we can manage your consent with our software. uh, Specifically, I'm getting a lot of calls from the hospital. See, the hospitals is one of the data fiduciary with whom the lot of responsibilities are there, because it carries lots and lots of digital personal data. It's not only the name, it's not only the addresses and all that stuff. Because in banks, maybe this could be the limited number of the atoms of the digital personal data would be there. But in hospital, you can imagine that what kind of a personal data is going to be. Even your blood group, even your, the X-rays of any part of your body, CT scan, MRI, whatever these things. So a lot of data is now getting collected at the hospital level. So hospitals, as a data fiduciary, needs a careful attention for the compliances of this, of this data protection law. Similarly, of course, the banks are there. Then the certain universities. I'm not talking about the schools, because the schools mostly they are exempted if the child is under the 18 years of age. As I said, they are exempted under some rules in the fourth schedule. But the universities where the students above the age of 18 are taking the admission, taking the educations, and for them, that would be again a voluminous data. So these things, of course, I'm just again waiting for the central government notification to whom they are going to declare as a significant data fiduciary, because I'm expecting the hospitals, the banks, the insurance companies, the stock exchange related brokers, the universities, they definitely will come under the significant data fiduciaries, and they will have to comply with the additional obligations. Definitely, I will come to that. But important for them is the consent management of all those voluminous data. And not only that is one-time activity, it's a continuous activity. They have to maintain the record for the number of years which are specified under the rules. But whether for the smaller kind of an entities, whether it is mandatory be required to take the services of the external consent manager, that is something the rules are not yet clear. But let me tell to all those friends who are approaching me and telling me that some software vendors are approaching them, telling that I'm handling all your consent management. I would like to bring to their notice that without having the registration with the board, without having the registration of such consent management entity with the board, they are not approved vendors. And please ensure that whoever is right now visiting to you and saying that I am going to handle the consent management, please tell them that you should be registered, you should be approved by the data protection board, and take the certification and whatever the documents of the approval from the data protection board. But let me tell you, the board itself has not yet set. The board is in the setting up procedure, so there is no question that the right now anyone will get the approval. I can expect that in the next year, around August, September, October, or November, in this month, or by the end of this November 26, you will get the list of all those approved consent management entities from whom you can avail the services of the consent management. So till the time, if anyone is telling you that they are the approved consent management entity, please don't trust on that and be careful about that. Then the rules applicable from the May 2027. As I said, those are mostly related to the implementation part on the data fiduciary. And what the data fiduciary has to do under that rule, all those things what we are going to discuss. So first thing about the notice to be issued to the data principals, to their customers, okay, obtain the consent, then they have to adopt some reasonable security guards, intimation about the personal data breach. So all these implementation related rules, they start from rule 3 and onwards. All those rules are going to be implementable and applicable from the May 2027. So this 18 months period, again, I'm saying this is a golden period. We as a data fiduciary, we as a chartered accountant, or as an opportunity to advise to our clients who are interested, because see, these rules, this act is applicable to every entity. It's not on the sizing basis. Nowhere in the act or nowhere in the rule they have yet said that these particular kind of an entities are exempted from this act. So there could be a lot of questions which will arise that this act or the rules are not applicable to us. They are only for the entities which are handling the voluminous data and all those things. But let me say that even if your client who is with you for the income tax return purposes, and if having some kind of a business entity, and if he's collecting a lot of digital personal data, and of course right now the things are only in the digital mode, so for them also this act and rules are applicable. So it is a good time for us to get acquainted with this rule, the provisions of this act, and to initiate the advisory kind of and things for that purposes. So the 18 months we can use it very productively for that purposes. Now the we'll actually start to thinking about the how part related to the implementation. But remember, this is going to be applicable from the May 2027. But as I said, we should understand when we say that we have to obtain the consent, we have to send the notices to the data principal. Let me again clear that who is the data fiduciary? Data fiduciary is the entity or the person who is collecting the digital personal data. It is not classifying like any particular type of the entity, size wise classification. Nothing is there. Nothing is there. It's a plain. Whoever is collecting the digital personal data, those will be called as a data fiduciary. So it could be the grocery shop wala, it could be the chartered accountancy firm, it could be the architecture, it could be the doctor, it could be the small clinic, it could be the hospital, hotels, everything, educational institutions, everything is getting covered under the data fiduciary. So that we need to understand. So it's a whole amount of the opportunity is there, because every entity is going to hit by the provisions. And you can imagine, I'm not going to touch upon the penalty part of that, but the penalties are not small. It starts from 250 crores. So it's not affordable to make any breach of this. And one more thing is not only the physical entities, even the entities which are on the digital platforms. Right. So if you can say the aggregators like the Olas and Ubers, the Zomatos and whatnot. So all those aggregators which we can say that the digital entities, those are also covered under here. When we are accessing certain websites for various purposes, various portals for whatnot purposes, those are also covered under data registry. So enormous amount of entities are going to take a hit. It's not a hit, but they have to ensure the compliances, and that's where these things are going to be very advisable to all the chartered accountant firms to take a lead and come forward for the to ensure the compliance. And one more thing, it is again going to hit our audit professions. Already started hitting the audit profession, because again I might have said it in my earlier webinars also, that already banks are very carefully handling the sharing of the data with the chartered accountants for the audit purposes. Most of the concurrent auditors, when they are visiting the branches for the concurrent audit purposes, so the banks are now saying that whatever the processes of the audit you have to do, please do that in their environment. So they are not ready to share the data with the chartered accountant, of course, because they are now bound by the provisions of this act, and in that case the auditor will become the processor. That things needs to be corrected somehow for some little purposes, but that will take some time, because the rules between the auditors and banks and all these things will these questions will rise, these issues will come up, and then the things will start with discussions and we'll get clarity about that. But at this moment, as I said, it is going to take the hit on our part also. So the first step towards this protection of the data starts from the sending the notice to the our customer, who is called as a data principal. The manner in which the notice is to be sent, it is clearly given in these rules. So it should be clear, plain languages. It could be in your specific language, like in Marathi or in Punjabi or something like that. So that kind of and things, localization in the languages would also be there. Then important part of this notice, see, this language is one factor, but what it should contain. if you look at the second point, is atomized description of personal data. So the meaning of this, how many atoms? So we need inventory of the atoms for which we are collecting the data. Any data fiduciary, even the chartered accountants, or anyone, whatever the type of the businesses, if they are collecting the personal data, now they have to make the inventory. Okay, what personal data we are collecting? Name is one atom, address could be second atom, date of birth could be the next atom, and so on and so forth. So the when we are collecting each of these atoms as a personal data, we need to mention that these are the atoms of personal data we are collecting with the specific purposes. So what I will do with by collecting your name, how I am going to use that, how I am going to use your date of birth, how I am going to use your email ID, right? So in the notice, every data fiduciary, so of course, now everyone will come with the particular format of the notice, and you will get that notice format sooner on various web platforms also. But the every item, name, purpose, for which we are going to use, all these things needs to be in a tabularized manner. We need to mention in the notice, right? And we have to ensure that all those specific purposes are the lawful purposes. Now the question would be there that if we are going to share the data with the another entity, so that comes under the data processor, and that could be the data processing. So let us say that we are using some cloud-based accounting model, right? And those accounting applications are not stored in our physical environment in our offices. So we are our database is in the cloud-based environment. Our application is also in the cloud-based environment, and there we are entering some of this personal data of some of our individual clients. So in that case, what is going to happen? You are collecting the data, but you are sharing that with the cloud environment, right? So one more thing you have to add in this notice is that this data I'm collecting, I'm going to use this for the accounting purposes, but I'm going to share that with this particular cloud entity, which is my data processor, and what they will do with that. So the consent is not only for the purpose of use, but also the consent is required to share the data with the data processor. If there will be any change in the data processing, again you will have to go back to the data principal. Let us say that now you have moved your accounting software from X cloud to Y cloud. So there is a change in the data processing. So again at that time, you will have to go back to the data principal. You will have to opt in the new consent for these things. You have to ensure that the old data processor has complied with the provisions of this act and so on. So this is going to be a good amount of task, right? So this should be the part of your notice. And as I said, for the smaller firms, it could be very handy to internally manage all these things. Let us say the size of 100 customers, you can handle, you can prepare one show, one time the notices, you can mention all these things. And mostly if the clients are static, they are not changing that much, and you are also not going to add any data in future. That could be easier task to be handled internally, all this life cycle of notices and the life cycle of consent management. But let us say if your client size is 1,000 plus and all these things, if you are sizable firm, then there could be a lot of challenges. Then you don't have any choice but to go to the approved consent management. That is a specific entity. I can understand that it involves a cost, right? But there is no other, choice. Of course, then at that time we need to add those costs in our professional fees. So the client will have to pay more for more professional fees to us, right? Then the notice also should contain the communication link. For what? Communication link to all these things for the withdrawal of the consent, modification of the consent, or whatever the communication that the data principal is going to tell you for that purposes. So it could be your email, it could be your website, it could be your something which can be traceable. So mostly either through the website or through your email. That is because we have to maintain the record. And as I said, for the bigger size of the firm, it's not possible without the consent management entity. Then, as I said, the data principals are enjoying certain rights. They have the right to understand and know what and how we are using the personal data. So they may frequently put you the questions, and there is a specific timeline is given under the rules. Within that, we have to answer to the data principal for that. I will discuss that. Also, in the notice, we have to give the link or the communication details that in case of a data breach, which is noted, observed by the data principal, that is our customer, how they can make a complaint to the data protection board. So this should be the content of the notice. So the what kind of a notice is given. So this is the how part. What should be content and how the notice is to be given. So that has given the clarity by these rules. Okay. As I said, the consent management. I'm going to making a lot of thrust upon this because this is a you can say the core part of all this data protection act. Whatever the things in dispute which will happen, and in that case, whatever the consent related evidences we need to gather, those will be coming from this consent management. And let me tell you that we are all knowing about the funds diversion as a fraud, right? We all know that. So funds are not used for the specific purposes as was agreed upon. Similarly, the new type of the fraud or new type of the legal actions would be in the form of data diversion, digital personal data diversion. So what would be the purpose for which the data is given, the purpose for which the consent is given. If the data fiduciary is going to use that data for other than those purposes, then it will be amount to the data diversion. In a simple language, that would be the data breach. And for that purposes, the prosecution and defense side, of course, they will go with the evidences, and the consent is the most important document in all those circumstances. So consent management will have a lot of importance in all of these data protection related rules of the act. So as I said, nobody can stand and say that they are the consent manager, but consent manager requires a registration with the data protection board, and it should be approved by the data protection. Of course, there are certain rules about to whom they will give the approval to act as a consent manager. So those things are given in these rules. So they should have the sufficient capacity, technical, financial, operational capacity. The net worth should not be less than 2 crores, right? They should have the ability, technical plus operational ability to handle the voluminous big data of various, data fiduciary, because there could be possible that one consent manager may handle the data of many more data fiduciary, right? So there is no limit on that. But so they should have all this capability, technical as well as operationals. So the rules related to that is clearly given. So registration process is mentioned, and that process, as I said, will start as soon as this data protection board will be set up. So that is the first task which they will have to complete, and we have to wait up to the next November 26, by which we will have the approved list of all those consent manager, and then this data fiduciary, they will have the choice to select those consent manager. And of course, as I said, this is becoming a very opportunity for various business entities. So there will be a lot of rush, there is a lot of competition, but at the same time, considering the compliances part, the huge cost would be involved in all this consent management. Let me tell that very frankly also. Uh, There are certain obligations on this consent management manager, and basically all these obligations are revolving around the life cycle of this consent management, right? So how they should enable the data principal to give the consent, all that process, how they can give the consent, they can modify the consent, how they can onboard, whether they have to open a separate account for that purposes, digital account, I'm saying, how they can link it to the data fiduciary, how can they data fiduciary onboard that, and then they will pass this information to the consent management in the both the ways. That those applications should be there. Then all these things related to the management of the consent, including the withdrawal of the consent, all these things should be there, right? And the most important part is the keeping of the record. The most important part is the keeping of the record. So all the consent manager management related records. So customer will give the consent, withdraw the consent, deny the consent, modify the consent, request for exercising of the rights, and all these things. All these records needs to be kept as an obligation by the consent manager. And the periodicity, which is minimum quoted in this act, that the consent manager has to keep this record for at least 7 years. As per under the provisions of this act, if any other act says that it should be longer than the 7 year period, then the provisions of this act is maybe applicable, but at least they have to maintain that record as per the provisions of this act for a period of 7 years. So that is the huge task. And you can see now what amount of storage, digital infrastructure they will require to handle. If you assume even the our population is right now 150 crores, and even you can assume that 100 crores of individuals are going to be come under the provisions of this act. So what would be the voluminous data they have to manage and keep the record all about? So that could be a challenging task. uh, One important aspect, as far as our business point of view or professional point of view, I can say that the consent manager is also has to apply the security safeguards. So whatever they are, because they are also receiving the digital personal data. So they I hope again the relationship between the data fiduciary and the consent manager. So consent manager in this case will act as a data processor. If we truly go with the section wise relevance of this relationship. So consent manager could be a data processor on behalf of this data fiduciary. So whatever the obligations are there for the data fiduciary, those obligations would be there for the safekeeping of the data with the consent manager. So there is no need to repeat it again. But from our point of view, from the chartered accountant's point of view, the consent manager shall have an effective audit mechanism that is of certain interest. So there will be two types of audit opportunities directly I can see here. One opportunity that is directly coming from the data audit at the data fiduciary level, right? So what is that data audit? That could be the safekeeping of the digital personal data, right? And the compliances of all these things. But at the consent manager level, there is a second type of the audit opportunity to review, monitor, evaluate, and report the outcome of certain such. So what the things that is expected in a smartest manner, the rule has given certain directions towards the scope of this audit. So the expectation from the audit is the technical and organizational controls, evaluation of that, the systems evaluation, procedural evaluations, the safeguard, the data safeguarding related evaluation, right? So this is a totally technical and operational part which is related to the consent management. Again, I'm saying, so there are, again I'm saying, there are two types of audits opportunities which we are going to get. One under the consent management, and second under the data fiduciary level for the data audit. And of course, those additional matters apart from this technical and operational controls, the satisfaction or compliances of these acts and rules. So this is a compliance task. So these are the opportunities, and of course, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, I hope they are coming up with the certification course in this data protection, and the chartered accountants will definitely upgraded with the skills for these kind of an audits, and I hope we will get an opportunity as a professional opportunity here to do the audit of all these things. Of course, with the upgradation of the technical skills, I can say. One more important provision which is there under the rules of this consent manager. See, once the consent manager as an entity is registered with the board, that entity cannot be sold, merged without the approval of the board. This is going to be an important thing which every consent management entity has to remember. So once you are approved by the board as a consent manager entity, you cannot sell it out, you cannot transfer it out, you cannot merge it out with any other entity. And that is, I hope, by considering the impact of the localization of the data, because the government is moving towards whatever the data of Indian citizen that needs to be resided only in the Indian local geographical jurisdiction. And what will happen? So at the beginning, the consent management would be an Indian origin, Indian incorporated company, but subsequently, if it is going to be sold to any foreign entity, then there could be some trouble. So I hope to avoid that kind of things, possibly this kind of an provision is there under this act, and that can be understandable. Uh, as far as the digital personal data, which is going to be processed by the state here means the government, central government, or by the state government, or their various departments and the agencies. So of course, they are going to use the digital personal data for a lot of purposes. So for the subsidy purposes, all of you know that Ladki Behna Yojana, Kisan Sanman Yojana, then they issue various certificates, benefits, scholarship, and whatnot. So at all these levels, the government agencies are also maintaining a lot of digital personal data. So they are also coming under the provisions under that. And for that purposes, as I said, the standards are provided under the schedule of this act. So they are also equally be required to adopt the security safeguards. They are equally need to take the consent in all these things. But again, here, interesting thing is that whether those government agencies are mandated to take the external consent management services or not, that is not clear. Or whether the government itself is going to build up its own consent management kind of an entity. Those things are yet to be clear. But all those government agencies, they have to provide the communication link with the website, app, or whatever the manner, so that the data principal can exercise right. They can execute these consent management related things, and that they have to appoint one officer to whom the communication, authorized officer with whom the communication is going to happen. So these are the standards SOPs for the government agencies which has been provided under these rules. Now, another costly item I can say, one is consent management, and the second is the cost wise, I can say, is the second provision is related to the reasonable security safeguard. This is coming under the rules. Because when we say that we have to protect the digital personal data, the question is, what does this mean? How can I protect the digital personal data? So protection part, which is a technical part, right? So how technically I can protect the data? So answer is given here. So it could be by encryption, obfuscation, masking, or you can tokenize that. So these are the technical measures which is suggested under any of these. You can go with the encryption, you can go with the masking, you can go with the virtual tokenization of that. So all of these possibilities or options, I can say, options are available. But yes, these technical things are needs to be implemented. The question is that even though it is very easy to say that all the data fiduciary, even the chartered accountants, they must have to now go with this technical adoption of some way or other to to protect the digital personal data. Of course, now more and more solutions will come up, more and more companies will come up. They will provide you the solutions. Some company will provide you the solution about the virtual tokenization. Some company will give you the solutions about the masking and encryption and all that. That is fine. Only thing is that the compatibility of that data with the existing applications. That is another question, because right now most of the applications, whatever your accounting software, taxation related softwares, or even if the audit related softwares, or even in the banks right now, whatever the CBS they are using, they are used to directly fetch the data as it is, right? So most of them may be not compatible with this kind of an protection technology. So suddenly we cannot start this virtual tokenization, and you cannot say that I will start isolately, but you need to ensure the compatibility with the existing application. And this is an important task, as I said, because the 18 months period is there. So if and it will take a bit longer time because it will require testing, it will require some development on the part of that application vendor. We don't know, and also some sort of changes in the database related applications. Some of the database application platforms like the Oracle, they provide kind of an inbuilt features for the encryption and all that, but others may not be. So in that case, in some cases, there may be the chances that you may have to shift your database platforms towards that. That I'm talking about the significant kind of a data fiduciary, or the data fiduciary which is for handling the voluminous amount of data. But as far as the chartered accountants are concerned, whatever the softwares, accounting softwares, taxation softwares, audit related softwares they are using, and right now the application is communicating with the database with as it is kind of a data which it is getting fetched. But in future, if any of this protection technique we are going to implement, the compatibility should be there. And first thing which we can start upon thinking, the first task which we can start upon thinking about, we should have the discussion with our application vendors, and if they are going to provide any solutions to protect the digital personal data, because that would be the good idea. So you have to take immediate steps from that angle. So this is the first point where you have to target right now. I'm telling you the action points, and this is the first starting point. Because without that, after 18 months, if the timeline is there to implement, then there will be a lot of rush, lot of things which you have to manage, and in that case, it would be a bit difficult for you to keep focus on this matter. So let us start on what the best solutions you can get for that, which is compatible with all the existing environment. Otherwise, there would be a change in the IT environment that may be on demand. The second thing, as a part of the security guard, which is coming out of control access to the computer resources. So here they are talking about the controlled access to the computer resources, means IT infrastructure. It could involve the IT devices, it could involve the network, it could involve the database related things. So those are the which we in the cybersecurity practices, we call them as an endpoints, or the inventory of the hardwares or the devices where the controls are to be ensured. Mostly, I can say that the banks and the insurance companies or the stockbrokers, they might be equipped with this because of the cybersecurity related measures. But right now, the control access is from the point of view there the control access was from the point of view of cybersecurity. It may be possible that some of the entities are not actually connected with the cyberverse, so they have only the functionality within their IT environment, physically within their offices. So in that case, even now they have to think about where my digital personal data is getting stored, from which devices it is getting accessed, and how I'm controlling the access, physical as well as logical access to those devices. So all this, architecture needs to be first revisited, assessed, and if required, the control mechanism needs to be improved there. The third point, now we talked about the control access to the IT infrastructure. So outside of the things, outside of the data, now inside of the data. So visibility of accessing the personal data through appropriate logs. So what happened now? Suppose you have controlled access to the devices, to the endpoints, or to the servers and everything. Now the application from where you are going to access the personal data. So in banks, I'm going to access the data about my CBL. In our CA firm, we are going to access the data from our accounting software or from the taxation software. So what we are doing with that data, so whether we are changing any from masters there, let us say in the banks that frequently happens that the mobile numbers are getting changed, right? Or the email addresses are getting changed. Or in some cases, that the names are also getting changed, basically after the marriage and all that. So in that cases, you are accessing the masters, customer masters there, and you are changing the details of this digital personal data. So in that case, all those activity logs needs to be maintained. Not only maintained, those needs to be monitored, reviewed, so that to ensure that whether these are the authorized activities or these are unauthorized activities, and so on and so forth. So these things, again, as far as the companies act is concerned, already they have initiated about the log verification details and other things. But now lower down to the proprietary level, partnership level, the firm level, to the clinical level, the hospital level, these things is going to be a tough call, because the log monitoring, log building, log collecting, this would require the additional stores, isn't it? And monitoring, continuous monitoring of that is again could be the part, specifically with specific focus on the digital personal data, and that is something is need to be so exceptional kind of an access, exceptional kind of an reporting and monitoring. That is what is required, because you know that a lot of complaints is going to be there in case of some inappropriate usage of that data. Then we have to again all the data fiduciary, they have to mention that CIA principle, which is the IT security principle, confidentiality, integrity, and availability kind of a principle, so that the data could not be get destroyed, lost, or that anything which can be get compromised with that. So all these technical measures supports all these things. And not only that, as I said, the detection mechanism should also be there. This could be the preventive one, but if some breaches happen, some unwanted things happen, some destruction happens, some loss of the personal data happens, so in that case the investigation should be possible. And for that purposes, this is a mandatory that whatever be the logs, now you can see here that the logs, so any changes in the digital personal data, the related log should have to be maintained for 1 year. So this is must, right? So now there are two timeline. One timeline we consider for the consent manager, that is of 7 years. For the data fiduciary, the retention of the access logs. If I am accessing any digital personal data today, so I have to maintain that log, because that will create a log, right? So that log I have to maintain for a period of 1 year, right? So again, what is the impact of that? The storage, the cost of the storage, technical capability, protection of that log, everything is going around that, right? So that is the things which needs to be considered. Again, the if we are sharing the data with any data processor, as I said, the the SLS, the agreements should have the clause about the same things about the reasonable security. In this case, a kind of a certification which we are expecting in another cases, even under the Indian standards of auditing, as issued by the ICAI, service level certification. That could be one of the major part which is going to provide us the opportunity that these data processor, which are the service organizations for the data fiduciary, whether they are complying with these provisions or not, the audit certification, the audit report for that is expected. That is all the things which we have to consider, right? So this is, even though looks like very simple to talk about, but implementation wise, it's not an easy task, and that is the starting point. Again, I'm saying we can start about. Now, the important obligation on the data fiduciary is that if suppose any data is getting compromised, is data breach has occurred, unfortunately, at the data fiduciary end, at the data processor end, then immediately, without any delay, the data fiduciary has to communicate that with the data principal. So they are what they are talking about, without any delay. That is very important, right? So suppose because of anything, unfortunately, the data is breached, personal data, digital personal data is breached, then without the delay, the data fiduciary has to communicate to its customer. What to be communicated? All these things are mentioned here. The description, the methods, or the safety measures they have adopted, what they are doing further, all these things. So, but the communication should be without delay. That is very important. Now, without delay is something which needs to be notably think about, because now they are not giving the time, right? So how continuously we data fiduciary has to monitor, and they have to understand, or the mechanism of detection should be such a quick manner that if anything which is getting leaked because of the cyber attacks, because of the internal processes, because of the internal staff related matters, whatever. And their chartered accountants, specifically I'm talking about here, specifically to chartered accountants. So, chartered accountants, again, I have told that in our earlier webinars also related to data protection, our practices by which we are handling the data, our practices by which we are transferring or sharing the data to even to our office staff, that is something which we have to take care about. Most of the time, if we are handing over the data through USB pen drive, or if we are transferring that data to their personal email IDs, which is not within the domain of the chartered accountancy firm. So there is quite a lot of opportunity that if the personal account of any individual staff is hacked, and whatever the data which the firm has shared with that personal on the personal email of that staff, so that is going to be leaked. Now the question is, when we will get that information, and what about those employees where they have resigned from our office, they have left our offices, lot of data shared with them. So we have to think from that particular aspect also. And this is not a question. Yes, this is the question for us as a chartered accountancy firm. Now think about the client side, from the customer side. Now, most of the customers, how they are handling the personal data, their practices, and now they have to reconstruct all these practices, even for the larger data fiduciaries, as I said, for the bankers, for the insurance companies, and especially for the hospitals also, even for the pathological labs. How the data is going to be handled, it's not easy now to transfer the data on individual email, or through the transfer through the pen drive or such kind of things. It's not possible now. So the whole things needs to be reconstructed, because it says that without any delay, now the data is handled to my staff, his personal account, email account is hacked, data is leaked. Responsibility is on me, responsibility on the data fiduciary to give the notice to my client, right? So this is the thing which we have to understand carefully in these things. Now this is the first part, that we have to immediately communicate that to the our data principal to our customer. And within 72 hours, that means within 3 days, we have to communicate that to the data protection board. Of course, if you want some extension for the time limit, still you have to communicate that within the 72 hours, and you have to grant an extension for that. The mode by which we have to communicate, what to communicate they have given, but the mode by which, whether by any portal, whether by email or by any other mode, that is not yet clear. But hopefully once the data protection board will be settled down, they will create some portal, right, to give the intimation, like the certain has created something like that. So some sort of things which will develop, and so the things will get settled. So there will be the communication mode, and access to that should be available. Perhaps the login of all the data fiduciary or the significant data fiduciary would be required on that portal. So I don't know right now, but these would be the further development. We have to keep watch up on that once the data protection board will be settled out. This is one more thing. Whether it's a small whether it's a small data fiduciary or the significant data fiduciary, right now, no clarity, but every data fiduciary, they have to provide the contact information of a person. So chartered accountant firm, they have to appoint one person. In case of any data breach, in case of data related things, digital personal data related things, to whom our clients can communicate. So those things should be ready with us. Of course, this would be in a larger context for the significant data fiduciary, because they have additional obligation, right? Now, as I said, the significant data fiduciary. Who are the significant data fiduciary? The Act has defined it. Mostly the entities which are handling the voluminous data, as I said already, hospitals, the banks, insurance companies, educational institutions, universities. They may fall under the category of significant data fiduciary, or the institution of a security importance, national security importance, like the election commission, right? So they are handling a lot of voluminous data, or the Aadhaar card entity. So they will become the significant data fiduciary. Of course, the government has not yet issued any list of the entities which will be called as a significant data fiduciary. But again, within the timeline of these 18 months, it is possible that we will get the clarity upon that, right? Significant data fiduciary. C opportunity again. Data protection, impact assessment, and audit. As I said, two types of the audit. One at the concerned manager level. Now this is at the significant data fiduciary level. For other data fiduciary, if the data breach occurs, see, there are difference. One, concern management level audit. This is significant data fiduciary level audit. Third, if at any data fiduciary, which is not a significant data fiduciary, but at any other data fiduciary, if any data breach occurs, in that case, the audit and forensic will be required. So in all cases, if the data breach is happened, then these things are must. But without the data breach, at the significant data fiduciary, what is required? The audit is required. And what is for that? Again, the compliances of the provisions, the technical measures adopted, the operational things, and all these things are required, right? So this is a mandated things for the significant data fiduciary. So one more type of the audit they may call, but that's okay. But as I said, as an ICI level, we are already taking a step. And those significant data fiduciary, these audit report will be getting submitted to the data protection board. So both the things, impact assessment and audit, both these things are getting submitted to the protection board, DPDP. So this is one thing which the additional responsibility as far as our point of view is concerned. Now, one more thing, they have to observe due diligence to verify that technical measures, including algorithmic software adopted by it hosting for the display, uploading, modification, and all this life cycle of the data principle. So these are some additional measures, technical measures, apart from the regular technical measures, which is suggested for the significant data fiduciary. And of course, that can be understandable because of the volume and the size of those kind of an entity. Now, as I said, the Act has given certain rights to the data principals. Data principals, again, customers. So whatever the request related to that rights is initiated by those data principal, the data fiduciary and the consent manager should have the mechanism to respond to that within a period of 90 days. So it's like the grievance redressal system. So whatever be the complaint, whatever be the issue, whatever be the things of communication related to the rights of that data principal, the action is required, our response from the data fiduciary or from the consent manager is required within a period of 90 days. So that time limit is again important, right? Otherwise, there could be the complaint to the board and all these things will happen. Now, certain localization issues already in the banking sector or in the insurance sectors, we are experiencing that already Reserve Bank of India has issued the direction that whatever be the data of the banking customers or the insurance customer, that should be resided only in Indian geographical borders. So similar way, because this Data Protection Act is applicable not only in India, it is applicable to the entities outside India. First, understand that. Those entities which are handling the data of Indian citizens outside the territory of India, for those entities also the provisions of this act is applicable, number one. Number two, now there could be the certain possibilities that the data fiduciary will require to transfer certain data for the data processing, let's say, outside India. And this is a complicated things because right now we don't know whatever the websites we are accessing so many websites, right? So from that point of view, where our data is stored in India or getting transferred outside the territory of India. For the physical entities which is incorporated in India, getting exchange the data within Indian territory, I hope there would not be that much issue because that practice is already started. But the data which is getting shared on the digital platforms, right? So where it is getting stored, whether it is getting stored within the territory of India or outside the territory of India. Right now, if there is no clarity, so government has put some restriction that without the general or specific order, those entities will not be able to share the data outside the territory of India. So let's take an example. If any internet search engine is there, or any social media platform is there, and we are onboarding on those platform by giving all our digital personal data. Right now, we are not asking this question, where is my data? Whether it is stored within the storage of India, whether it is getting stored in USA, whether it is getting stored in Europe or anywhere, well, I don't know, right? And we don't bother about it. But now this condition is going to impact, right, to those such social media platforms, to those internet search engines. And most predominantly, I can say now, all of us chartered accountants, we are very well equipped with now the artificial intelligence. And we have started using the artificial intelligence platform. So be careful there. Don't share any personal data of any of our clients on that platform. Right. Now the question is there, even our credentials, which we have created on that artificial intelligence platform, those also this conditions are going to be applicable. So yet yes, right now all these things with the specific rules I'm talking about by interpreting on my own way. But it clearly says that by general or specific order on the behalf of government. Now we have to wait for the general or specific order of the government related to the various social media platforms, various artificial intelligence media platforms, related platforms, search engine related platforms, or any other those websites which are collecting the data, but those are not getting stored within India. So what the stands those platforms is going to take for the compliances of this transfer of personal data outside the territory of India, right? Because right now there is no such specific or general order right now. So this is going to be have a larger impact on such kind of an social media platform companies or the artificial intelligence related platform entities. So that is going to be an interesting things to look into, and the decisions are going to be impactful on those platforms. Uh, these are certain kind of an not crucial but important rules are there, that if any entity, any data fiduciary, any entity which says that now we will erase your data according to whatever the legal provisions or whatever their SOPs and etc. etc. But before erasing that data, they have to communicate to the data principal 48 hours before. So if I want to delete the data of my customer, personal data of my customer, I cannot do that immediately right now. So if I have to erase that data, first I have to give the notice today, and after 48 hours, so if it is today is what, 4th, so possibly on the 6th or 7th, I can erase the data. So this is what the rule says. But again, I'm saying the data logs, traffic details, all these things we need to maintain for a period of 1 year, right? We can erase the personal data, but the logs related to that, the logs will include the log of erasing of that data. So all that logs needs to be maintained for a period of 1 year. So we need these are some of the included in the schedule, that these type of an entities like the e-commerce platforms or the online gaming content platforms, social media platforms, for them the time period is defined up to what time period they have to maintain the data with all the purposes. So the 3 years, if you can see in all these things, 3 years is the common time period which within which they have to maintain that. And of course they are having certain riders also. So e-commerce platform having 2 crores registered users, online gaming entities having more than 50 lakhs registered users, the data fiduciary on the social media platforms who is more than 2 crores registered users. For such an entities, the time period for maintaining the data for the specific purposes is 3 years from the what is that 3 years starts from the last approached date of the data principal. So if suppose today I have done any e-commerce transaction, from today the 3 years that will be get counted. Again, if I do the transaction in the, let's say in the month of January, February or March, from that day 3 years will be get calculated. So something like the limitation act, I'm getting remember here the provisions of the limitation act for the time barred cases, the provisions are made here under. Yes, verifiable consent for processing of personal data, which, as I said, this Data Protection Act requires the consent of the parents if it is the data of a child, right? So in that case, the certain additional things under the rules they have provided for. What is that? So let us say that X is the child and he is claiming that Y is the parent. So it is not the responsibility of the data fiduciary that they have to confirm that Y is the parent. And for there, they have to observe the due diligence. Now, here the due diligence you can correlate with the KYC norms. So, under the KYC norms also, there is a due diligence process. So, they have to confirm the identity of Y as a parent. Right. So first they have to identify that why is the adult person. The parent itself is the adult person. He should not be the minor person. That is the first thing. Second thing, they have to take the due diligence in the form of identification, address book related things, and they have to establish the relationship between them. So this could be again an interesting thing. So let us say I'm imagining if the child is registering on certain websites, then they have to identify all these things of the parent. So again, that would be some KYC kind of a digital KYC or eKYC kind of a mechanism that needs to be put forward for all the entities. So that is one more step they will have to adapt for. And in case of a person with certain disability or some special persons, those things will be the consent will be given by the lawful guardian. Again, that is coming from the provision of the sections of the DPDP Act. So in that case, the data fiduciary has to confirm the reality of that lawful guardian. So how they have to they have to confirm the reality of the lawful guardian. So they have to verify the court order, that the court order is given this person to appoint as a lawful guardian. That could be one, or by the designated authority. Now, who are the designated authority? The list is given, and or by the local level committee also. So this is going to be the one more complicated steps for the implementation point of view, where on all these technical platforms, digital platforms, all these measures needs to be adopted to carry out the additional processing part. So for the parent confirmation and for the lawful guardian confirmation, due diligence, these additional steps are. And in case of a lawful guardian, so court order or the verification by the designated authority or by the local. So now you can see the how much traffic is going to be connected. Now the question will be here that that designated authority will become again the data processor. That local level committee is also going to become a data processor. So they will have to follow the same rules. So all this is going to be the the network where all the provisions of this law is going to be impacted upon. After the end of all these important provisions which we have discussed, what the chartered accountants or what the entities they should do to ensure the compliances of this provision? Because again, I'm saying no entity will afford the 250 crores. That is for sure. Of course, the nature of the data breach, its impact, all these things will be considered. But right now, the minimum penalty is 250 crores. So no one is going to afford that, and that will going to take the going concern kind of an principle that is going to be hit because of that much amount of the penalty. So where to start about, how to start about for the implementation and ensure the compliances of the provisions of this act. So the first starting point for whether it is a chartered accountancy firm or any other entity, or whether it is a bank or whether it is a hospital, first take an inventory of all those data which is of the nature of a digital personal data. So list down all those items, what we are collecting as a digital personal data. We are collecting definitely the name, we are collecting the address, we are collecting the mobile number, we are collecting the email and so whatnot. So make a list of all those. So this is the broader list, right? So this is the data which we are collecting. Now, ensure that why we are collecting, what is the purpose, where we are using such names, where we are using the date of birth, where we are using the email, where we are using the mobile number. In case of a bank, they can say that, okay, we are using your mobile number for your SMS, we are using your mobile number for mobile apps, we are using your mobile number for the UPIs. So these are the specific purposes, right? So likewise, you have to map, okay, why we are using the email ID, because to communicate to certain things to you, right? So these are the legitimate purposes for which we are collecting your data. Now, the third thing which we have to do, of course, if we are sharing these details to other parties, which is the data processor. So in the bank, what is happening? So they are sharing these details, right, to the let's say the card printing agency. I mean debit or credit card printing agency. So if they are transferring this, so they have to identify those points where we are sharing this data. So let's say in case of an hospital, in the hospital, what they are doing for the additional testing purposes, pathological purposes, they are collecting the blood samples, they are collecting other samples, they are sending the patient, to the other diagnostic centers. So that could be the data processes. So in that case, they are sharing certain data with them, or those diagnostic centers sharing the data with the hospital, either or both ways. So they will have to map out the purposes and the sharing point, and how many entities with which we are sharing, and what is the necessity of that sharing. Can we control that? Can we control that? So this is the first outset. This is the first beginning point. As an assessment part, we have to carry out. This is the very simple operational level exercise. What we are collecting, why we are collecting, with whom we are sharing, and is there any necessity to sharing with that. We have to ensure that all this is legitimate usages, and we are not sharing that. Remember here, sharing with your staff, that also needs to be ensured. Sharing with your vendor, that also needs to be ensured. So not necessarily with the processor. What happens in many times, I have seen, let us say the hospital is implementing certain software. So for testing purposes, they may share some patient data to that vendor for the testing purpose. That is also sharing, right? Even though now the rules is that for the testing purposes, you have to share the mask data, not the data as in the absolute form. So all these things, because mostly we think, okay, data sharing means only for the specific, but not like that. So that's why this is a specific assessment we have to do. And how can we reconstruct that where, so that our sharing could be minimized, our inventory of collection of the data. So minimization is one of the important point of the compliances in this. So collect only minimum data, only the required data, do not share that, and reconstruct your processing part of that data. So that is the first step as an operational matter we have to think about. That is the first step. Second step, how we are storing that data, whether it is in the encrypted form. Right now, many of us are not storing that data in the encrypted form. That is okay. But how we are storing, where we are storing, what is the, because it's, I'm not talking about the storage in the laptop, so I'm not talking about the storage in the, the hard disk of the computers. In the bigger significant data fiduciary in the hospitals or in the banks, they are storing it in the specific separate storage that is connected with the SAN storage or the NAS kind of a storage and all these things. But how that is configured, okay, and how the data is stored, and not only the storage, backup of that storage, backup of our data, that also needs to be masked, that also needs to be encrypted. Even at the DR site, so some of us will have the DR site. So at the DR site also, equally these measures to be adopted. So for the significant data fiduciary, the measures to be adopted not only at the data center level, but also at the disaster recovery centers also, DR centers also. So both the things, and even the backup. Some of you might say that I'm collecting the backup on my external hard disk. That needs to be encrypted because it may also contains the data. So the technical measures, the storage points that we have to capture about. Now, if right now my data is not masked, as I said, that must be the starting point now. What would be the best technique to safeguard that? Whether encryption is better, whether masking is better, whether tokenization is better. So now you have to compare these things. You have to technically evaluate that things with all the respect. And now you have to make the selection of that. But with that, as I said in the earlier discussion, you cannot isolately take that decision, because whatever be the applications you are using, that needs to be compatible with those solutions. So checking up and testing of those compatibility of the application is one more important aspect which we have to deal with. Then the after 1 year's point of time, let's say from the November 26 onwards, the real game will start about, you will get the list of the approved consent manager that maybe get published on the board's portal or on the website, and then the things will start really circulating about the notice circulation, consent management life cycle, and all these things. So that will be the starting point for the implementation. But pre-implementation stage, up to the encryption level, this could be the pre-implementation. So now you are ready, and now you are ready for the further implementation related things about starting from the notices, consent management, and all these things, right? So that would be the really starting point for your implementation. In between, you should be also get ready. Like when we talked about the cybersecurity mechanism, the various guidelines say that the entity should have, of course, I'm talking here for the significant data fiduciary, like hospitals, like the banks or the insurance companies. They should start already. Some of the banks have started and appointed the DPO, Data Protection Officer, right? Who is ensure the compliances, who will be the single contact point, will take the cognizance, will communicate with the board and all these things. So DPO, below that, the staff, whatever the required as per the size of your entity. And then the next thing is about the security, log maintenance, monitoring, protection, right? And the data audit and the impact analysis. So the starting points are very clear. Data audit, that may not happen immediately. Data audit may be required as per my understanding if the implementation date is May 27. I can foresee that the first data audit may be required for the significant data fiduciary and for the concerned manager somewhere in May 28. So from April 28 onwards, the audit things will be get starting gearing up, and up to that, as a chartered accountants, I can say we can gear up, we can improve our skill sets, adopt the knowledge, go for the certification course, take the opportunity which is available on the ICI's platform. ICI is definitely coming up with this certification course on this data protection, and we can improve our skill set, and we will be ready by that time, right? And the last unfortunate part that should not happen, but communication of the data breaches if it happens. But mind you that it will not be from the entity's point, because most of the data protection will take care, I hope so. But what we are experiencing right now, that even if I have not shared my mobile number to any finance companies or any particular company, but they still try to call me, with my numbers, and we get surprised that how those entities are receiving the calls. So mostly from the data principle, lot of complaints will be getting lodged with the data protection board, and every entity for that matter be ready. It may be not from the directly from the data fiduciary, the complaint will start. But if there would be the larger cyber attacks and something like that, then of course every data fiduciary, they have to communicate, as I said, immediately to the data principal and within 72 hours to the data protection board. But this individual complaints of the data breaches, I think it will get flooded. And there is a data protection board, there is a appellate board, and all that regulatory judicial mechanism would be there. And there also the investigation, forensic, data diversion, all these things are coming up. So I think I have covered this one right for this moment. Now I'm keeping myself as a full stop, and I'm now opening this forum for the questions. Yes, Neha.
Wonderful session, sir.
Thank
Just
you.
waiting for the questions to take. But before that, I take an opportunity to just summarize whatever I understand from whole DPDP rules. First of all, it's not privacy, it's protection rules.
Yes.
And I guess protection is invited above privacy, because privacy can be questioned, but when it is protected and safeguarded by the law, so it gives a sense of satisfaction to the people around.
Yes.
Your way of delivering the session from beginning to the end was so much concluding in itself. Like you're giving us the structure of the rule, like 23 rules and 7 schedules. So it made us motivated indeed to whenever we are free, so we can, scroll the schedules, see what's more inside it. So definitely you bring and created the interest for the topic. And the relationship between consent manager, data fiduciary, and data principal was very well explained by you throughout the session. And the thing which you focus that it should not, as in chartered accountant, should really not focus on the volume based institute. As you mentioned, the examples of hospital, university, hotels, the person who are running the grocery, or even Mintra and Ola. You covered almost all the real life example with so much simplicity that it really goes to the mind. And which is the bread and butter for the chartered accountants, like the
Absolutely.
concurrent
That is
audit.
more
You,
important. That is more
I
important.
think you intentionally included that example to keep us all alive after, the post-lunch session is quite challenging. So when the concurrent audit word was taken up by you, so my all ears and eyes were on it. It's not the topic which we can skip. And data is actually nowadays, and earlier we used to get the phone call frauds, na? Ki our phone number is like people used to ask ki who gave you the phone number. Now this is such a small thing when we are living in such a digital world. We cannot escape data saving via data sharing, but this of course rules which you mentioned key is actually creating the 360-degree safeguard for especially the real owners of the data. And real owners are actually data principal, which I think most of the company used to feel ki they are the real owners. Like Mintra having the database of their customer used to feel the owner. But with these rules, I think the real owner will get the real position.
Absolutely.
Your way of like telling us about the audit opportunity was adding every icing over the cake. Like building the system 2 years before its actual implementation. Like if the first audit will ever take place in May 28, as you mentioned, and if we as in fraternity group together and learn on this topic, we can really create history on this type of work,
And
which was
ICI
actually
and
untapped.
ICI is giving you the opportunity by launching the certification course.
Like, but ICI before that is giving the opportunity, like conducting webinar and inviting a resource person like you, who matlab, literature you're reading out really feels different when it comes from the expertise acumen person. And lovely to hear your this the years of experience turning the bare literature into much more wider opportunities. And then about the action plan was the terrific thing which you prepared at the last. It sounds like, the index of the chapter which of the book which will wherever we publish. I think the people will get the data from this only from this webinar today, because I don't think so far today we have any literature yeah book published as an academic purpose for DPDP rules. But definitely your action plan is going to be the index of that particular book.
Yeah, I try to keep it as simple as possible.
No, that really show your experience, sir. The vast experience which you have in this field. Your each and every example, the presentation from beginning to end was covering all the possible aspect in such a minimum time. You covered such a huge content. So big round of applause for you, sir, from my
Thank you very
side.
much. Thank you very much.
And now I shall give the chance to our lovely audience who are with us, and we shall forward to start taking our question and answer round.
Yes, please. So, is there any question, Deepshika madam? Who is getting the questions on the chat? I think you or Deepshika.
On the chat box, ma'am must be having the access.
Okay.
Dipshika ma'am. Uday sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here only.
Acha, हाँ. And tech support Ashok ji. Actually, sir could not see the chat box.
I hope that would be on the chat box of Deepshika ji or tech support. Ashok ji, do you have any questions on your chat box?
I think there is some technical error.
No, no, I got one that is, can a data principal, a particular consent manager to be used? Let me check it again.
Yes.
Yeah, can a data principal, a particular consent manager to be used and he would give info only to them? Yeah, it is no, it's not like a data principal who is going to choose any consent manager. It is the data fiduciary who will appoint will avail the services of the consent manager, and data principal will have the link that will be published by the data fiduciary, and that will be get shared with the consent manager. So unfortunately, it's not like the data principal will select the consent manager. It is the data fiduciary who will avail the services of the consent. Consent manager will or can only be the external. There is no direct clarity on this aspect. As I said, for the smaller firms or the chartered accountants, let us say who is managing only 100 clients, for them it is not possible or affordable to avail the services of the external consent manager because the volume is so less. So for them, if they are okay with the life cycle of the consent management internally, my guess is that my view is that they can manage that internally. But you can see for the significant data fiduciary like the banks, hospital, etc., they cannot manage that. For them, there is no choice but to go with the external consent manager. Consent manager and fiduciary can be the same. Consent manager and fiduciary, right now, there are no such clarity in the rules. Because what is going to happen right now, some of the techno-savvy companies, some of the software development company, they will definitely come up. Even the cloud-based cloud service providers, they will also come as a consent manager. So, on the one hand, for certain services, they will act as a data fiduciary. On the other part, they will act as a consent manager. Right? The roles would be different, but the company possibly could be one. Right? So, right now, the board or forget about the board. The roles is not talking about the independence of the consent manager, which is could be the difference from the fiduciary. That is not clarity. The second point you can ask again, that will be the same point of the first one, that whether the fiduciary can be the consent manager. As I said, for the smaller entities, for the smaller chartered accountancy firm, they themselves could be the data fiduciary and they themselves could be the consent manager. But if the volume is very low in that case only. Kindly throw more light upon the exemptions to the educational institutions, schools, and yeah. For the now you see that there is a provision under the Data Protection Act that if the data of a child is going to be used, then the consent of the parents is required. That is the thing, and
Correct.
that we have discussed that for the purposes we have to again take a due diligence for the identification proof and address proof of the parent. But in case of an educational institute, if the data is going to be used, and that is only educational institutions only allowed to use the data of the kids only for the educational purposes only. So for their admissions, for their, you can say, for their security within the premises, only for that purposes, or for the examination purposes. If only for these purposes the data is going to be used, then there is no requirement to obtain the consent from the parent. This is the exemption to the educational. But if the educational institute is now, let us say, going out of the scope, then in that case, so you have to see that educational institution, if for the education purposes using the data, no consent from the parent is required. But if they are going out of this, consent from the parent is required. And the same is applicable for the doctors or the clinicals where they are treating the kids. So pediatric, we can say for the pediatric or where the mental, mental clinics are there for the kids. There also the parents' consent is not required, but only for that purposes. If auditor is not given info, can he also refuse to give info to a peer reviewer? No. Now, what is going to happen? That could be the interesting question, and I was expecting it because many on the forums we are discussing that. So now, what needs to be done? So, because of this Data Protection Act, now the information which is making available to the chartered accountants for the audit purposes, that is required, that is mandatory. But within the environment, in whose environment that is going to be made available. So it may be possible that certain entities, they will say that you will process the information like the banks are doing in our environment, number one. Or certain companies or banks will enter into the NDA with the similar kind of an SLA clauses, that we will share this information as a data processor, because auditors would be enter in the role of a data processor. And if the auditor has set up a mechanism to protect the whatever the information of the digital personal data shared by the auditee, if they have the mechanism to set that, all that needs to be complied with. But remember that auditee can have the right now to audit the auditors. That would be the certain things. Now, what needs to be done when you are accepting the audit at the engagement level, at the acceptance of the engagement level, you will have to set out the procedure in a written manner. So how the data will be made available, how the data will be handled, how the data will be processed for the auditor, whether within their environment or within your environment. If within your environment, what the protection measures you are adopted, all this will come out as a part of your engagement details. And whatever your arrangement is, that you can enforce to this auditee that okay, we will handle the data within your environment, provided that you will keep that backup or you will keep that processed data at least for a year or 2 year or whatever. And if that is the arrangement, if that is documented, the same can be made available to your peer reviewer, because now peer reviewer also has to update themselves with the provisions. Can you please lay down the sequence of the event to happen for, say, the say us the CA firms, what we need to do, what timelines, and in a sequential manner. So again, I will share my last PPT for that purpose. So to answer your question, you can see that as a chartered accountants, first we need to start how many clients, what type of personal data we are collecting, what is the purpose, make the inventory of that, whether we are sharing with that. Sharing means including our staff, including our vendors, including our service providers, whether we can minimum that data, whether we can minimum that sharing, where we are storing the data, right? What kind of a technical measures we are adopting to protect that data. So the starting point would be this. And after 1 year, you can go for, for this technical things, appointment of the consent manager if you require. If your firm is small, you can handle internally. That's right now my personal view, because it's the things, some things are not clear. And then the protection part, observation of the DP rights, security, and all these things will come. So the starting point, first take what data you are collecting from how many customers. Make a simple inventory of that. That is the starting point. So you can take a snap of this. These are the action points in this sequence you can start with. If parent alleges that DPDP Act is applicable to the school, who should prove to the DP parent of school? No. Now the rules are very clear. If the parents are making such type of an allegation, then you now the rules are out, and that is in the public domain now. So every school can demonstrate, and they can make aware. They can arrange the session of the parents. They can call for the meeting of the parents, and there they can show them the rules and the exemptions, and thereby the awareness would be created. Based on the exemption, school can continue as usual, or do they need to take precaution for that? Only the consent exemption is there, sir. schools still have to adopt the protection technical measures for the data encryption, data masking, or the virtualization. From that, they are not exempted. See, only the consent thing has been exempted. Security and the technical things, school also have to adopt. There is no exemption for that purposes. That should be very clear. Good question, and appreciate you have put this question, because otherwise the message would be that they are exempted from all the process. It's not like that. Only they have exempted from obtaining the consent from the parent. Only that is the one point. Technical measures for the protection like encryption, masking, security, all these things are well applicable to the schools. Is there any provision or rules for giving consent to the many federations through one consent manager? Like, unfortunately, it would be not. Only thing is that if there would be only limited consent managers, entities, and let us say in India only there are 5 or 6 approved consent manager entities. If that is the case, in that case you will find some commonalities. But at right now there is no such mandate that only one consent manager will handle the all the consent from all the data principal. It's not like that. It could be many to many relationship. Does data erasure contravene in? Yeah. So it may be possible that the data principal may communicate to you to erase the data right now. But let us say, I'm giving the example of, let us say the bank. So in the bank, the customer says now, erase my data. Okay. He has the right to ask for the erasing of the data. But there are certain other laws like the PML Act. It requires that all the banking transaction to be preserved for 5 years. So even though he's asking to erase the data right now, that is not possible. We have to communicate to that. Okay, we will erase, but first we have to go by the other provisions of the law. So PMLA talks about the maintaining of the data for 5 years. Other laws could be banking books evidence act and other law. They require to maintain the data at least for 10 years. And India minimum for the income tax purposes and other purposes, the data is maintained for minimum 10 years time. So even though there is a request to erase the data, we cannot do so immediately because of the any other law. But there is a but. What does this mean? When they are asking to erase the data, the entity has to ensure that they will store the data, they will not erase it, but the data will not be available to any of its staff, any of its data processor of that particular data principal. That precaution they have to take it about. So this applies to individual data which is stored in the employer record on a social networking. Yes, this is applicable to the employer's record of the employees and the staff, whatever be the media. I mean, whether in the physically or in the social networking site, all the rules are applicable. How can a CFM prepare to comply? Yeah, these are the action points. Those are in front of you. So all these action points, you can note it down or take a snap of this, starting from the inventory, mapping with the purposes, sharing points, sharing with internal staff, external vendors, how we are storing, where we are storing, how we are taking the backup, encrypted, masking, compatibility with the application. All these points are in front of you. Uh, just a minute. Webinars cover specific sectors like bankers, share brokers, mutual fund likewise would be more useful. Of course, sir, this is a well acceptable suggestion, but this is just a beginning because on the 13th of November, this is the rules are published. So as per your suggestion, definitely we are going to take up. I can say. Maybe from on behalf of this committee, but definitely I will suggest this committee to take this webinars a sector specific. Definitely will take care about it. How can a company build a database of its customer if the data gets deleted in 1 year? A data gets deleted, that is an data breach as per the provisions of this act. So first thing you will have to communicate if the backup provisions that must be there. Otherwise, there could be the possibility of penalty. Now you cannot afford that. So backup with the encryption, DR site with the encryption, all these things should be there. And one more thing, it is going to take a hit on your financial statement. That is also we have to remember. In the context of significant data, what periodic 1 year, sir, 1 year. And how to integrate with the existing risk management? Of course, with the risk management framework, they have to now consider one more risk of the data breach as per the provisions of this act. So 1 year is the periodicity of the audit. What distinguish consent manager and consent manager who will manage all the consent of the data principal of the customer. So I will give the permission, I will withdraw the permission, I will modify the permission, I will ask you to erase my data. That is the work of the consent manager. Data fiduciary will actually manage the data, protect the data. Is the data handled by the data processor who will be at the default at data fiduciary? All the responsibility will be casted upon data fiduciary. Even by the breach of the data processor, it is the responsibility of the data fiduciary. Whether we, the CFM, would continue to work on these softwares installed on our servers and employees and the partners using the software, you can, provided the compatibility with the data protection technical measures, as I said, encryption, masking, etc., or tokenization that you will have to apply. And your softwares needs to be compatible with them. If your software vendors, they have to work it upon now, they will come up with the versions which will be compatible with these provisions. If they will provide that, then you will be continue to work upon it. If they are not, then you will have to think about the alternatives. Is it over? Okay. Thanks, but good and interesting questions from the participants. Thank you, Ashok ji, for sharing that with us. And
And
thank you,
I
Neha. Thank you for your wonderful anchoring for this session.
Thank you so much, sir. Having from you, giving me so much pleasure. And I am privileged indeed to propose the vote of thanks for today's discussion on the navigating DPDP rules. We extend our gratitude to you, sir, for sharing your expertise and insight on this crucial topic. Your experience have illuminated the complexities of data protection and show us the way forward. We also thank the Committee on Commercial Law for organizing this event and bringing us all together for such event and enthusiasts to deliberate on this vital topic. To all the participants, your engagement and your questions have indeed enriched the discussion. And let's carry forward this momentum to build a secure and privacy respecting digital future. So thank you so much to all the lovely participants and Uday sir.
Thank you very much, Neha ji. Thank you.
Yes, sir.